Michael Vaughan is the England captain who delivered the longed-for triumph in the greatest series of all time. He will always be synonymous with the glory of 2005. For Vaughan, personal success against Australia first came almost 3 years earlier on the 2002-2003 tour Down Under. England lost 4-1 to Steve Waugh's Australians, arguably the best team to ever play Test cricket. But Vaughan made 300s and piled up 633 runs, learning along the way how he could win back the Ashes. I went to meet him at his home in Cheshire to find out how 2002-2003 shaped what would come in 2005. This is From the Ashes, Michael Vaughan. Michael, series From the Ashes is about players who've got prominent Ashes stories and how the Ashes has impacted their life and what they went through. You more than anyone were sitting in your house now. Would all of this exist without the Ashes? Like, is the impact that it's had on your life?
I doubt it. Who knows where my life would have gone if I'd not had success in I guess 2 Ashes series. But I was like most young kids, playing the game, watching and listening to so many Ashes series, looking back at 81 and listening to Test Match Special, 86, 87, early in the morning when I should have been going to school. I wanted to listen, trying to take a radio to school to see what the score was. And there wasn't any phones in those days where you could just have a look at X to find out what the score was. But the dreams of playing cricket are one thing. The dream of representing your country is another. But to play in an Ashes series, it's always the pinnacle. And again, I always go back to the 80s. There was that computer game. I can't even remember what it was called, but it was on my Spectrum 48K, and I used to always play England versus Australia. We had all the names like Gower in our team, and Australia had the likes of Lilly and Thompson was in that team. And I used to always think, God, if one day I could just play an Ashes series in just one game.
This isn't about 2005, because I think you must have talked about 2005, I don't know, every day of your life since then. But what I did want to ask is, how much of an impact does that have on your life today, still 05? Like, how often do you get asked about it? How often does it come up?
I mean, all the time, but and I guess that's why it was so special. And I'm allowed to say that now. I think 20 years on, and when you still get people in the street, I've been golfing in Scotland, playing with South Africans, playing with American people, and they talk about 2005. And I think the biggest strength of 05 is when you get a 30 to 33-year-old who comes up to you and says, I got into cricket because of 05. And I guess that's the biggest achievement of that series. Of course we won, and it was spectacular, but the biggest achievement was to get more people interested in cricket. And I think that's what your job is as a team and as a player. Throughout the time that you play, at the end of it, if you can kind of retire, or your team can kind of say, right, that's it, we're kind of moving on with a new group. If at the moment that you all disperse and you all disappear into the distance, which is pretty much what happens. We just had a few beers with the 05 side just a week or so ago, and literally it's been 20 years that some of us haven't seen each other. I think people think that when you win big series in big moments, I think people think that you meet every Sunday morning and have a brew. It's just not what happens. So to think that people got into the game. And that's why I look at this England side now and think, whatever happens with them, if they can win a big series like the series that we're going to go to in Australia, they're going to be remembered forever, because they're going to play a style of cricket that people like watching. And I do think it's important that you play that style. I do think sport is about, winning, you win, and at times you win at all costs. But if you can win by getting people excited and getting people on the edge of their seats and getting people talking in the cafe bars about the style of play, or the little bit of controversy that you've kind of created, or the flamboyant moments that you've kind of delivered, I think you'll always go down and you'll always be remembered.
The reason I ask about the impact that 2005 has had on your life when we talk about 2002-03, you only played 10 Ashes tests. And in your first Ashes series in Australia in 02-03, England lost 4-1. It could have been 5-0 because you're 4-0 down after 4. But you made 633 runs. Only 2 other men this century to go to Australia as a visiting batter have made more than 600 runs in a series. Alistair Cook, Virat Kohli. You made 300s, you're man of the series. The question is, does 2005 happen without 02-03?
No chance. No chance. No, I mean, first and foremost, 2-2-2-3 was just, it was a roller coaster. I'd had a great summer in 2-2 against Sri Lanka and India. I'd scored quite a few runs and found a little bit of rhythm, found a bit of a movement with my batting. Found a mechanism of thought once I got to 20 and 30, rather than just think, that was enough to go on and be a more dominant player. That's just confidence and a bit of experience. But what happened in Australia was very interesting. You've got to remember, at the start of 2002, there was no sign I was going to be the captain. I'd captained England under 19s and captained an A side, but there was no real hint really around that time that I was going to be the next England captain. So I wasn't thinking of a leader at all then. But I always look back at Yorkshire actually, and we had overseas pros like Greg Blewett, Matthew Elliott, Michael Bevan, and then Darren Lehman arrived. And I always remember Darren Lehman giving me 1 or 2 tips as a young player, and it was to be more positive, to be a bit more expansive, and don't be scared to take the opposition on. And from the minute he told me that, I started to play a bit more expansively, started to hit the ball a bit harder, started to challenge more bowlers with a few more questions rather than just defence. And I wasn't a bad bowler. I was a player that liked to get in, but once I was in, okay, I can now start to work how I'm going to score a bit quicker. And that was down to just talking to Darren Lehman. So then to go to Australia in 2002 and 3, I just gave myself a thought process as that I wasn't going to allow them just to bowl. I wanted to challenge them. And someone like Glenn McGrath and Jason Gillespie, Brett Lee, obviously the King, Shane Warne, I kind of realised that if I just sat in, I wasn't going to get many. And I also realised that if I just sat in, I'd probably not send a message back to the dress. Remember, I'm opening the bat at this time with Trescothick, and Tres was naturally an aggressive player. And I always thought if we could just get off to a decent start, it would send a bit of confidence back to the dressing room and just send the message that there's runs out there, and if you can get in and you can do the right things, you've got a chance. I mean, ultimately, to beat that Australian side in Australia, let's be brutally honest, you ain't going to do it. That's the honest truth. We didn't think like that at the start, but we knew it's a fight, we knew it was a battle, and everything would have to have gone our way for us to have competed. But I always look back at that series and what I learned in that series, and I studied Steve Waugh throughout that series. And I didn't realise I was actually doing it.
He was Australia captain at the time.
He was a skipper. And I didn't realise I was doing it until I got the England captaincy. And once I got the England captain, I thought, all right, what do I do? And I thought, right, I've got to look back on the people that I've been captained by, and I have to look at the captains that I've seen when I've been playing against them. And Steve Waugh was a standout. And it was just his manner, his mechanism, his... I always look back at county cricket in the 90s where you'd play 11 o'clock till 11 o'clock till 1:15, and there was 104 overs or 110 overs in the day, and you get to 1 o'clock and you'd bowl your part-timers to get a few more overs in before lunch, so you'd have like 37 to 38 overs in the tank, so you wouldn't have a long afternoon. So I'd bowl a few overs, just get through them, like really kind of timid stuff just before lunch. And every time I watched Steve Waugh, the over before lunch, he'd turn to someone like Brett Lee and go, right, ball bounces around the wicket. And I used to go, oh, the last thing that batter needed at that time, particularly playing in Adelaide, you just want to get some chicken, plum chicken. You don't want to be facing bounces just before you go and have some chicken. But he would make those periods that I mentioned that I was brought up in, the 15 minutes where, let's be honest, most just want to get off the field, he'd make that period the hardest period. And there was things like that I stood in, I thought, just little things like walking on the field. I'd walk on the field and say hello to everyone. The opposite, morning. You'd say hello to Steve Waugh, he'd just look at you. It'd make you feel about 3 foot tall. But he's not even said hello. And then you go out to bat and you're taking your guard and you come in at extra cover. And he didn't have to say a lot. But he intimidated you with field setting, just just small words, not abuse.
Mental disintegration.
That's exactly what he delivered. All right, it helps when you've got Vaughan, McGrath, Gillespie and Brett Lee, but his tactical nous I don't think has ever been given enough credit for. I thought he operated that group and made it very, very difficult. And obviously the way that he batted was just tough, brilliant batter. But I look back at that 5 test match series, and yes, I scored runs, so I got belief in myself that yes, this Australian side are great, but you can get them, you can get at them. And actually the win in Sydney, we were 4-0 down, it was going to be a whitewash. And the performance that we gave in Sydney was tremendous. We won the toss, we batted. And the pitch did a bit, and Mark Butcher got a tremendous 100, and we got a number on the board, and it wasn't a massive number, I think it was 360. And I kind of looked back at that game and thought, well, we got 360, they got pretty much parity. In the second innings, we went at them because we didn't have anything to lose, so we went at them, and the pitch deteriorated, and Carrick got 7th, and we bowled them out, we won the game easy. And I remember sitting in the dressing room afterwards going, you know what, you've just got to do that 3 times. You've got to produce that performance 3 times in a 5-match series, and you win the Ashes. And kind of looked around, no one spoke in the dressing room, but I thought in the back of my mind, any team can be got if you play good cricket. And you've got to be brave, bat first against that Aussie side because they got warning. You're not going to win many games by bowling first against warning, so we're going to have to be brave if we get to 05. And again, I wasn't thinking as a leader at that time in Sydney. To be honest, we were getting in the dressing room and we were driving golf carts down the road back into Sydney and got caught by the police, John Crawley and co. But going down to get the captaincy a year later, I just know that was the kind of series that I kind of learnt so much from me, from the team, from the ability that if you play well, you can beat anyone. And more so looking at someone like Steve Vaughan going, yeah, that's the way to captain.
Before you were the captain, you were the batter. One of the main reasons you got the captain was because of the runs you scored. Before that summer of 2002, you played 16 tests with 100 of an average of 31. The next 12 test matches against Sri Lanka, India and in Australia, 02-03, 12 test matches, 700s at nearly 77. Why? And
no idea.
But was it something you'd done with Duncan Fletcher? Was it the forward press at that time? You just said you changed your attitude in trying to, be more aggressive and put bowlers under pressure. But that's a big difference to go from 16 tests at 31 to 12 tests at 77.
Look, technical changes, forward press, kind of get myself in a ready position earlier. Just before the release of the ball, making sure that I was aligned in a ready position rather than sometimes I'd leave it late and my front foot would kind of just step across just to on and around off stump, which made me really vulnerable to that ball that nipped back. I think the ultimate kind of change was mindset and just belief. And just to accept, I would have been 28, 29. Just ultimately saying to myself one day, I've got to be better. I've got to bat for longer and I've got to get bigger runs.
Did you feel like your career was on
no, I wasn't. I was always going to be playing, but I think you define, and Neil Fairbrother, who's managed me for many years, his great line is, your currency is runs, and that's the best line of any player. You got to remember in cricket, you're an individual surrounded by a team ethos. But only you can score the runs. No one else can score the runs for you. No one else can bowl for you or catch for you. You've just got to do it. And eventually, when I realised I was decent, I could play a bit. But to get to that next stage, I genuinely just think it's just the mentality of, right, concentrate. People always say to me, what's mental toughness? I think the art of concentration. To concentrate for long periods of time is mental toughness. And can you be, it's not can you be bothered, but can you challenge yourself to concentrate for longer period of time? And I look at Joe Rittman, you look at those numbers, Joe's done it for, about the last 7 or 8 years. His powers of concentration are remarkable. And his powers of consistent movements are remarkable. And that's why I look at all these players that do it for a period of time. It's just the art of concentration, the want inside to be out there for long periods of times to help your team. But I was on a pair at Lords actually against India. I think Zaire Khan or Ashish Nehra got me at LBW. And I remember sitting in the dressing room going, I've had enough of this. That ball that nits back's doing my nutting. I've got to go and change it. So I went in the indoor school that day for hours and hours with Nigel Stockwell, the trainer, physical trainer. and we just set up the bowling machine, and I just worked a movement. I just drilled this movement, trigger, do it early, trigger.
Was that the forward press?
Yeah, so I went forward and got my back foot aligned just ahead of my front foot. And I thought, right, I'm just going to do that, keep my head over that off stump, and let's just see where it goes. Then in the second innings, I'm just going to go with it. I'm on a pair. I got a quick single, could have been run out for naught, I think, but I got off the play, and all of a sudden I started to flow. I thought, oh, that's quite nice. This is giving me so much more time. You know, it's like Duncan Fletcher used to always say, when you trigger, make sure you get there early. You know, it's like going for a bus. If you turn up late, you're going to miss the bus. So make sure if you're going for a bus, just get there early, because the bus will come to you. And it's the same with a batting trigger. If you do it early, the ball's going to come to you. If you do it late, you're knackered. And that's what I did on that occasion. I got a lovely 100, and then from there it just kind of flew. You know, I felt like I had so much time. I had so much flow on the front foot, the back foot, that kind of wide base that I ended up with. I didn't have to do a great deal more from there. I could just kind of press forward and play that drive. I could press back and play the cut, the pull shot. So that was the kind of technical manoeuvre, but it was more you just get a confidence and a flow. Look, the first 15 runs of any innings are tough. It doesn't matter what your movements are. There's always that vulnerability of the pitch, the ball, the conditions, the situation of the game, and you're always vulnerable early. But I always felt around that time, if I got past 20, 25, I felt I was going to get a score.
During that India series, you got 100 against Sri Lanka at home in 2002, and you got 300 against India, so 400 in the summer. Is it right that you spoke to Sachin Tendulkar during the India series for a bit of advice on how to play in Australia?
I did, yeah, I did, and he was great. I mean, he like I would say now, I mean, it's a great place to go and bat. It's just dealing with the noise of this. You've got to remember the Aussie side then, they were powerful, and they had probably, you could argue, the strongest body language of any sporting team. They had such a presence. You know, you had Matthew Hayden, you had Justin Langer, Ricky Ponting. You know, these are three players that were just in the ranks. Then you got Steve Waugh, then you got Shane Warne, then you got Glenn McGrath, Jason Gillespie, Adam Gilchrist, Damian Martin, Brett Lee charging in, bowling 95 miles an hour. So they had an incredibly gifted cricket team, skill set wise, but an incredibly gifted cricket team mentality wise.
Presence.
They knew, and they knew that they could with their body language and presence and their mindset, they could belittle any opponent. And you had to be tough.
Is that why you went to Sachin?
Yeah, I just wanted to know what was it like. You know, what was it like to face this? You know the skill sets that are going to come. I asked about McGrath. I'd never faced McGrath, and he gave me a couple of pointers about McGrath, and just he's actually, I think it was just make sure you let the ball. Just said to him, but make sure you let the ball really come to you against McGrath, because he'll just bowl that kind of length, but he will give you opportunities if you're willing to just hang in there. And when the ball gets a bit older and it's not nipping, you can actually get on and drive that length. That's such a tricky length with the new ball. You just got to try and survive that. And then that length that he bowls again with the older ball, you can actually climb into it and drive on the up. So it's just earning the right. I mean, Sachin got that. I think it was a double century in Sydney where he didn't drive.
Didn't cover drive.
Didn't cover drive. And I think the cover drive in Australia is the best shot in the book, but also the worst shot in the book at the wrong time. I mean, that sounds completely obvious. And the wrong time can be in the first 20 overs in the first innings, when there's just a little bit of moisture in the surface. Australia will offer that kind of half volley. You go chasing it. There's always just a little bit of oomph in the pitch. And that's when the outside edge comes into play. In the second innings, when the pitch is a bit drier, that same delivery that you get in the first innings might be your opportunity to climb into it. So it's assessing what the right shots are for the conditions that you're playing, and that's just experience, and that's just, again, mental toughness. You know, mental toughness, really working out what's on, what's not, and when it's on, go for it. You know, and if it's on in the first innings, of course, go for it. But it might be that the first innings is the innings where you have to play a little bit of the attritional style for 30 overs, and then you can get stuck in. And in the second innings, it might be vice versa. Actually, it might be the new ball's the time to check, you know, really take on the new ball and be ultra aggressive, because there might be a bit of spin, there might be a foot or two, and you think, got to go after the new ball. So it's just assessing the conditions, like most places, but it really is important that, you know, like Sachin did on more than one occasion, he worked out the conditions better than most in Australia. So yeah, it was always nice to have a conversation with him.
So you get into Australia, you're in the squad, England are getting together. There was a little bit of upheaval in the run-up. Graham Thorpe was named in the squad, then he pulled out. I was looking at the tour last night. You were there for ages.
Yeah.
First game was on the 22nd of October, the first tour match. The last one day was on the 25th of January. There were 4 warm-ups before the first test. Imagine Ben Stokes' team doing that now. But you made 100 in the last warm-up against Queensland.
I think I was injured. I think my knees, I had dodgy knees all my career. I don't think I played in Perth.
What, in the very first warm-up?
Yeah.
In the last warm-up before the first test against
Alan
Queensland,
Border Oval.
made 100. But you were there for forever.
Yeah, we were.
I suppose that was the last.
Played a load of golf.
That was the last old school Australian tour, I guess, because I think by 06, 07, the amount of warm-up games had sort of been cut back. The chopping and changing between formats. I mean, after the third test, you went off and played some one-dayers. It just doesn't happen anymore.
I spoke to Alan Lamb and Glaston Small about 86, 87, and they went through their whole. I think they played 7 games before the first test. Time's a different time, but I kind of look back at that, and I remember arriving in Perth, and I think we did a gentle fielding session on the Wacker, and honestly, it went great. We did some good run-throughs and we did some good catching, and we were great. Honestly, we all kind of went, we're up for this. But they positioned a camera, and clearly, when you're fielding for an hour and a half and there's 16, 17 in the squad, there's bound to be 1 or 2 go down. And they've positioned a camera and pretty much took a picture of every single catch that was taken. And then, obviously, we all dropped 1 catch each at least. I probably dropped a lot more than that. And next day on the front page of the Perth paper, or whatever that's called, I had England drop into town and pictures of all dropping a ball. I mean, that is what you have to expect in Australia. Again, you don't get that anywhere else in the world, and you don't get the news channels really harassing you like you do in Australia. They will chase the England side, and they did back in 2002 through the airports, through your hotel. Cricket's big news when the Ashes is on in the UK, but in Australia it's monstrous news. It really is front and centre of every single news station. So I guess you've got to deal with that. You've got to deal with the headlines. I mean, I loved it when Brody went to Brisbane, and I can't remember what was that.
The Courier Mail.
The Courier Mail. They weren't even mentioning, would they? I mean, that's all part of the drama. That's all part of why the Ashes is so special.
So on the subject of Brisbane, 2002, first morning, coin goes up, lands in England's favour, and Nasser Hussain says, "We'll have a bowl." Mm-hmm. What had happened? Did you know that was coming? What was the reaction in the dressing room?
No, I mean, no, we didn't know. I was starting to get my pads on, to be honest, but he must have seen something in the pitch. I mean, there was a few clouds around. I mean, 2, I think. But in a funny way, I mean, he's been lambasted for it since, hasn't he? But you can kind of understand it with the team that we had. I guess the conditions were always going to be warm and the pitch was going to crack in, and they've got Shane Warne, so it was a stupid decision. But in defence of Nasser, if we'd have gone 4 or 5 down at lunch because there was a hint of moisture and we managed to bowl them out for 250, it was probably on the chance we had of winning the game. That's the truth of the matter. If we'd have batted on that first day against McGrath and co, we'd have probably been 200 all out anyway. I mean, they were just so good. So I think when you come up against it, sometimes you've got to accept you come up against a team that's just better. And whichever way you go about your business, you're probably going to lose. But when we get to Sydney and you do it the way of getting runs on the board and you see the pitch deteriorate, you think, that's the way to play against a good team.
But Simon Jones happened that day.
Jonesy happened, his knee went, didn't it? I dropped an absolute goober at extra cover. I think I let one through my legs at gully to get Justin Langer off the mark. We'd had this talk about, come on, we're as one. So when the Aussies come at us, we all go together. And I think Caddick gave Matthew Hayden a few choice words early. Hayden drop kicked him over his head for 6. And Caddick went again, and we were like all looking around, and we all going in, and no one went with Caddick, so he was left stranded. Simon's injury was again, that was horrific, you know, because he was bowling great. Now, again, I'm not saying that he'd have won us the Ashes series, but would have competed a lot more with the Simon Jones for a few Test matches. But I actually look at the way that we fought in that series. You know, we didn't have the skill sets to really beat the Aussie side, but I think we fought hard. You know, we had one or two, probably Perth, we kind of slipped away a bit, but the Adelaide Oval Test, we fought hard. Melbourne, we had a bit of a crack, we were following on, we fought hard there, and then obviously won the last Test. So we avoided the whitewash, which was well, I wouldn't say it wasn't one of the special moments in my career, but they were a special team.
In Brisbane, you know, Nasser's done what he's done. You've been heavily beaten. You've made 33 and naught.
Not out that. Shocking decision.
But not a sign of a things to come, necessarily. In between, you go and play Australia A. England have to follow on against Australia A. So you almost lose by an innings to the A side.
In Hobart?
I think it was in Hobart,
It's too cold for us.
And then in Adelaide, you said you were injured. You're struggling with your knee. There's a game you nearly didn't play.
Yeah, I was in the nets, yeah.
The second Test, and maybe even right up to the toss. Not sure if you're going to actually
Morning of the match, yeah, and my knee had just locked. Clearly there was a bit of gristle or floating cartilage, and it got like kind of jammed.
Sign of things to come?
Jammed in my joint. I was like, God, I can't even run. So anyway, Fletcher would just go in there, hit some balls, and I said, just strap it up and hit some balls. And I just said, can we have an injection? And the fisherman, you just inject it if you want. And Nasser had not even been given the green light from the nets that I was playing. He's playing. And which I was delighted with. I wanted to play. So
when he went out to toss up, wasn't 100% sure if you were...
Yeah, and then we were in the toss, it was boiling. Batted first, which was great, and I hobbled out. With Trez, I said, Trez, not to be fair with Trez, you didn't have too many quick singles, so that was quite handy. And the adrenaline of being out there and the injection and more tablets throughout the day, that soon nullified the problem.
37 without loss. You're on 19. Andy Bickle's bowling, wideish one that you drive, loops towards Justin Langer at point. He dives forward and he says he's caught it.
He did.
And you stand.
Yeah, he caught it.
And Steve Buckner, the umpire, calls the TV. Steve Davis is the TV umpire. Mark Taylor on TV is losing it over... That's definitely out, it's commentary. And you stand.
Yeah.
And it gets given not out.
Yeah. It was in that era that you just knew you had a chance. And they were always going to take it upstairs. I mean, he dived forward and it kind of bounced around here.
And on his palm.
It wasn't at the end of his finger, so yeah, probably in the middle of his hand. But it was close to the ground, and you know, with the cameras and you know the way that the kind of cameras operate, it was always going to look like that ball would have touched at least one blade of grass.
Yeah,
I reckon it might have just brushed one blade, and that's enough. It's to hit the ground. But when you're in the middle and it's happening, the longer it went, I know I'm getting away with this, and I was laughing to myself because I knew what was coming. I knew I'd get away with it, and I knew I'd be absolutely lambasted.
And were you?
Oh God! They completely went
in the middle.
Yeah.
And who was that?
All of them. Yeah, the whole group. But Langer took it all day. He took it all day, which I can completely understand.
Goes McGrath and bowls, and Vaughan drives another scything stroke, but along the ground this time. The seagulls scatter there at deep backward point as another boundary is recorded, and Michael Vaughan goes to 50. It'll be a controversial innings, no doubt about that, but he's reached his 50 from 72 balls. He's hit 4 fours and 2 sixes, and that's out of England's 81 for no wicket.
You know, I really should have been out, but you get away with it, and it was a typical Adelaide Oval pitch, the old kind of pitches where it did a bit for an hour or so, and then it was a belter.
Were you made 177?
Yeah, it was flat.
So you said you copped it all day from them. Well, you're making this 177. When you've made that score and what's happened, what does it do to you knowing you've not just scored the runs, but you've also come through that from the Aussies, taking that all day, which is harder, the batting or the getting that in your ear?
No, I actually quite enjoyed that kind of element of being abused. It was making me chuckle inside, and But you've still got to have, you know, that focus and that concentration. I'll keep going back to that. That art of concentration is the key. And you know, they had Andy Bickle in the team. Jason Gillespie bowled a quick spell. He actually chipped my shoulder, hit my shoulder, and I don't know, just after 100, I think. Didn't realise it was chipped. Warney was just being Warney. He was chirping away. But Warney was always great because if he did well, he was the first to shake my hand when I got 100. You know, all the players, when I went in the dressing room, it's funny because I went into the dressing room and our lads had put obviously the 100 on the board with the gaffer tape, and then it was 5 or 10 minutes after going to do a bit of press, and we had to delay the press because I had to have all this ice on my right knee, and then I had all this ice on my right shoulder. I'd be like Dad's army, and then suddenly the Aussies actually had to come in and shake my hand in the dressing room. They all did, apart from Justin. Justin took a couple of years for Justin really to speak to me, but that's what makes kind of the Ashes. There's always moments in the Ashes that every individual player that's played a few Ashes Test matches, there'll always be something, and the confidence that I felt from, you know, to score 100 against Australia in Australia as a player, that doesn't get much better. You know, that feeling of, you know, celebrating 100 is always great, but to celebrate with, you know, the Barmy Army on the bank and in front of the old scoreboard, it's of all the hundreds that I've got in my career, I always say that first one in Adelaide's the most special.
Bowling to Vaughan, who edges and he's caught at slip by Vaughan. Vaughan's innings comes to a sad end right at the end of the opening day, and Australia so characteristically striking back when it really looked as though England would finish the day in a dominant position. Vaughan is out, caught Vaughan, bowled Bickle, 177.
You lose a test and you lose in Perth and the Ashes are gone. As we've touched on, the series then pauses. You go off to play one dayers for a month, at which point Shane Warne dislocates his shoulder. He's out of the last 2 test matches. So then you're pitching up at the MCG for the Boxing Day test. Ashes are gone, but there's still 2 test matches to play. I guess from your point of view that, you know, you said that's the, you know, one of the best hundreds that you made, or you look at that one, but you're still in a team that has lost 3 test matches, and in 3 test matches you've made 100. Okay, that's okay, but in the Boxing Day test, you make 145 in the second innings. So all of a sudden, you're going from having an okay series to now standing out. What's that doing for you as a cricketer and as your mindset?
I just remember that game, they made us follow on. You know, Steve Waugh generally didn't used to do that, and he made us follow on, and we could have won that game. Just needed another 60 or 70 runs, I think would have won the game.
Because they only ended up chasing about, 100 in the second innings?
Yeah, we had him jittery. I think Steve Waugh might have been caught behind. We didn't appeal. It was a massive nick. We were starting to play better cricket. I think sometimes in Australia, and particularly against that side, it takes probably 2 or 3 games to realise you are up against human beings. I think at the start of that series, you look at them like they are robots, like aliens, like they're just too good. And the more you play against them, the more you realise if you bowl your best balls, you've got a chance. But their ability was to make you not bowl your best balls because they used to hit you off your length. And they used to intimidate, so you'd panic and you'd chase and you'd start doing a few things that necessarily would allow them to score a bit quicker. But the more that you play against that side, and the more that I played against them, I completely understood that they were quality. But if you did your basics really, really well, you had a chance. And that's what happened in the second innings in Melbourne. The pitch was pretty good, and Stuart McGill was playing. We managed to score a few, managed to hit them around a bit. I think it was around the time the MCG was on I think there was one massive stand that was being renovated, so there was a massive void, like a load of builders. So I remember scoring 100 there and like looking around to see where I was celebrating and waving my bat. I kind of lost and I just saw a load of builders. So I waved my bat to these builders. They got a bit of a nod, but you know, I think I always remember that tour for our fans actually. You know, there was this group, the Barmy Army were always very prominent, but it was around that time that they travelled in numbers. And the MCG, and I don't think it was Bay 13, because I think it was Bay 13 that had been knocked down. But we just had this massive section for the whole week in Melbourne. And there must have been 3,000 or 4,000. And they just were so vocal, so noisy. And you thought, oh, if you could just give them something. And I guess that something came with a little bit of hope in Melbourne. And then a fantastic performance in Sydney, which leads then to everything that we achieved in 2005. But it was more the fact that I kept on looking at this England group of supporters thinking, cracky, if we could do something with this kind of this team that we had and the younger players that were coming through, there's something special that could be around the corner.
Just before you talk about that Sydney game, what about the way that you batted? Because often you were pulling balls off lengths that weren't necessarily that short, particularly off McGrath, who was so metronomic in his length. Then what that does is gets the bowler to correct that length and the ball too full and you can drive. Was that conscious?
But the bounce is so true in Australia.
But one of the things I remember of you playing in that series, or when you were batting at your best, was that one-legged pull shot, the swivel pull.
Yeah. Again, it's the trust in the bounce. If you can. You look at a spot on the wicket, and I used to always look at the spots and think, right, if it's around there, there's a chance I can take that on. Anything shorter than that, it's going to get too high and it could be dangerous. But it's just that, and the pitches they're not as quick as people think. Even the whacker, when they say, it's rapid, it's not that quick. It's just the aura, and it's the doctor, the Fremantle doctor that comes in at the whacker that's used to put players off, and I completely understood that. But if you can trust the bounce, you can take it on. I actually didn't. The first test in Brisbane, I played a couple of pull shots against McGrath. After that, I didn't do many, because I think he started to pitch it up a little bit more, which I found it a lot harder. The actual full length delivery was my danger ball. That in between length, I felt I could pretty much score on both sides of the wicket, but it wasn't anything that I planned for. I think people thought, I went to Australia, I was going to play the pull shot, I was going to play the drive. It just happened naturally. And that's why I always say, anyone that said, how'd you bat in Australia? I said, just bat and just instinctively react. And if you instinctively react and you've got a few options up your sleeve, I think you'll be very, very successful. Because as I keep saying, the pitches generally are the purest. Ball gets softer, probably quicker than most countries. And you've just got to trust your mentality. That's all it is. It's the fight of mentality, and it's the fight of how big an Ashes series is that sometimes lets people down.
England are improving as the series goes on, probably. Certainly, scoreline doesn't reflect it. You're 4-0 down, but you're not playing horrific cricket. There's an argument to say that this team is improving as the tour goes on. But you could have lost 5-0. You could have lost 5-0. But second innings at Sydney, we touched on it before, sort of parity after first innings. You make 183 in the second innings. Andy Caddick 7 in the second innings on a pitch that started to go up and down, the sort of pitch that suits him as a seam bowler. He takes 10 in the match. And there's the celebrations after that. The famous picture of you all with the flag.
I don't think Caddick played again.
He didn't. That was his last test match.
10 for and gone.
Yeah.
Crikey. It's a bit harsh, isn't it?
But what about that as a celebration to have won one test match?
I reckon if you kind of just popped down and you'd not seen the whole series, and then you saw our celebrations in front of the fans in Sydney,
you thought you won the Ashes.
You'd have thought we'd have won 5-0. Oh, we give it big licks.
And what was the night like?
Great. Yeah. I think the Prime Minister, John Howard, came in. I think it was John Howard around the time. He came in the dressing rooms, and we were in our dressing rooms. The dressing room attendant, Rocky, the old Rocky guy, he's an amazing guy. He used to write motivational messages on the dressing room every morning. The guy that drove the Gatorade buggy out.
Yeah.
And it was the Gatorade buggy that we took out the SCG that night to try and get back. Me, John Crawley, Mark Butcher. I think Keesey was on that. Well, we needed to get home. There's no taxi, no Uber back in those days. So we decided that, look, Phil Neal, the manager of the team, busted that gun.
It's a decent journey from the SCG.
Yeah, we didn't realise that. We only managed to get to the traffic lights just down the road. And then the police pulled us in and said, lads, just take it back. So we took it back. But sitting in the dressing room with the Aussies was great, because it...
Was that the first time that you'd had
We weren't allowed. NASA made it very clear that he didn't want us to socialise with Australia. But at the end of the series, you're always going to do that. And it was just nice to sit around with the likes of Hayden Langer. Actually started to speak to Justin, which was great. Ricky Ponting and all these legends.
Where you talk about them being human?
Yeah.
Is that where you break that down? And
yeah, I like, look, people do things differently. My belief is when you're up against a human being that you don't know, particularly when that human being's exceptional, the best way to find out about them is to get to know them. And you generally always find out that they're just normal people that just play cricket very, very well, and they're very tough in terms of what they deliver. But we had a great crack, great fun in the dressing room, and that's for me what playing an Ashes series is all about. You have to have those moments. You have to have those times where you play, you lose, you win, you draw, whatever it may be. But you know, most England sides and most friendships like move on from when you finish. If you look at look at Ian Botham. Ian Botham's mates are all Australians. You know, most of my mates in cricket, as much as they're English, are Australian, and I hope that's still the case. I guess it's probably different now with the franchise world, and they all get friendships with many of the players around the world. But I think there's an ultimate respect in an Ashes. I think both sides. I mean, I don't think either side ever admit it, but the pressure that you're under. I mean, the Aussies have never really admitted.
But only you two know what each other's going through. There's very few people who know what's...
But I think the Aussies generally hide that. They never say, oh, you know, the Ashes are tough. They just say, oh, no, it's just another game of cricket. Well, it's not. It's not. And I've seen that since then. You know, in 2005, in 2009, just watching 10 and 11, when obviously Andrew Strauss's side did the damage down there. You can see now, and I think in more recent times, Australia have realised that, you know, it's tough. It's not as easy as potentially that 90s side made it look.
After Sydney, within a few months, you're captain. You were man of the series in that series in Australia. You were number one batter in the world for a period. Then you became captain. Straight away, are you thinking 2005? And in that period between 2003 taking over from Nasser and either the first Test match in 2005 or getting your hands on the urn, how much does that dominate your life? Is it almost every waking moment?
No, it didn't. No, it wasn't 2 years of waking up every morning going, oh, I've got to beat Australia, because the only way you beat Australia if you win games before. You can't suddenly arrive in an Ashes series to play against that side and, you know, not beat South Africa, not beat the West Indies at home, don't beat New Zealand, don't beat the West Indies away. You've got to win. So you have to find a formula and a mechanism of how to win. But over the 2 years, it became very obvious that we were going to have a fresher team, a younger team, a more not a more dynamic team. That's the wrong word, but a team that had no baggage or very little baggage. I think what was very clear to me in 2002-03, and understandably, is that once we'd lost the first Test, and then you lose the second Test, it's like here we go again. You know, because a lot of those players had been around the England side in the 90s. As great a group of humans that we, you know, could ever have wished to have playing for England. They were great people. They'd had so much bad experience of playing Australia that's natural to think negatively when you get into that kind of negative zone once again. So we just needed a fresh set of minds, and, you know, you needed bowlers to get 20 wickets. That was the key.
When you got your hands on the urn at the Oval, or I don't know, in the days afterwards, and there's probably not a lot of thinking that had gone on in the days afterwards, given what you got up to after that. At what point around about that time did you know, I'm not sure life's going to be the same again?
I mean, you never know to what extent. I think the majority of us have been able to, you know, we have normal lives. I mean, we don't have extravagant lives. I guess Freddie's become household name for obviously 2005, but for what he's achieved on television after. Kevin Peterson is, you know, globally a superstar, and you know, there's many others that have done really well in the game. But I don't know. It's always funny that moment when you win is the best moment, but also quite deflating, because you're like, oh, it's over now.
Yeah.
All the stress and the pressure was hard to deal with, but, you know, the kind of adrenaline that you get from being in a series like that, and then suddenly it's done, it's over. You're like, oh God, what's next? And I always say this, and, you know, 2005 was they always talk about climbing the mountain, don't they? Getting to the top of Everest, and for that team, I think that was our pinnacle.
We didn't even that 11 didn't even finish the series. Really.
No, it just felt like, even though it was a short journey, but there was a lot of people's bodies that weren't right, and I never felt with that group that we were going to have like a 7 to 8 year period together. It always felt like a bit of even though we're quite young, it felt like a little bit of a stopgap. that we were just around for that period and we had to try and maximise it.
Well, even for you, you only played 2 more Test matches in the next 2 years.
Yeah,
after 2005.
Yeah.
And you didn't get the opportunity to defend the urn as captain in 06-07. I mean, when did you know 06-07 wouldn't happen for you?
Oh, early. My knees were knackered. I had this micro fracture surgery, which is where they drill into the bone to create a bleeding, which creates a scab. So I knew pretty much. I actually knew in 05 I was knackered. I was having injections pretty much every other week in 05.
But how did it feel not to be able to go and try and defend the urn in 06? Because you were there, weren't you?
Quite nice, actually. Got absolutely hammered.
You were around
and
the
would have
team,
been hammered with me, by the way. It's not the Australian side. I mean, it's almost like we'd poke the bear.
Was it tough to watch?
Yeah, because a lot of my mates were playing and it wasn't easy. And I think there was a lot of things that went on, and the Australians, they wanted revenge. You know, they had legends that were going to say farewell, and you know, once you've beaten them once, they're not going to allow you to beat them twice, particularly in their own backyard. And that's why I always felt that side that we delivered from 2-3 to 2-5, we were very much geared towards English conditions, the way that we played. You know, the Duke ball, getting it swinging around, using a holding spinner, having players that could take on the kind of aggressive option at the right time. We tried to score quickly. That was our game away from home, where you had to be a bit more attritional, and you know, spin came into the equation, and you know, your quick bowlers over a 5-match series overseas, we didn't have enough in the tank to rotate. You know, there wasn't many waiting in the wings. So I did feel that side that we had was very, very much a kind of English conditions. Even though we had pace, we had bounce, I did feel that it was more of an English style kind of team that we put together.
You tried to get another go at them in 09. You resigned as captain in 08. You'd come back, got Graham Smithed, as a lot of England captains do.
Yeah.
And you tried to get back for 09. You tried. Did you know as well that was such a long shot, because you were retired before the series?
No, Straussy ran me actually at the start of 09. I said, look, I want you to get some runs in county cricket, and then we'll have a look. But my body was just knackered, you know, and I couldn't do the training. I couldn't do the kind of work in.
Did you think you had a shot, or do you think this is such a long shot?
No, there was the odd morning that I woke up and thought, yeah, come on, let's have a go. Try and get that bat in slot, because Jonathan Trott ended up playing in that series.
It's Ravi Bapara at number 3.
Yeah,
He's done well in the West Indies.
Yeah, I was looking, going, there's a chance, and there's an opportunity if I'm playing as well as I could. But you know, when you're fighting knee problems all the time, you know, I just felt, and I probably retired a little bit too young, you know, because you know I had a phone call on the physio's bed when I was playing at Worcester, and the second team had scored, 550, and Joe Root and Johnny Bairstow got another 100 each, and I went, nah, time to move on. You know, I've always been one of those kind of people that as soon as I realise I've had a good time of it, I believe that young people need an opportunity as well. So my mind was never ever, I would have royally embarrassed myself in 2009.
But you lifted the urn in 2005. Yeah. By the time the next Home Ashes series came around, you were a former cricketer. You retired before that series started. I mean, you were only 34. You were younger than or the same age as what Joe Root is now. I don't think many people would have thought that, you know, when you were lifting the urn at the Oval, that'd been the last
different times. Like now they, you know, they will play till they're 38, 39. I mean, 34, 35 was the norm, you know, back in those days. And it's just, I'd never change anything. As I said, if I'd have played in 09, I'd have royally embarrassed myself. You wouldn't be sat here now. You'd be saying, God, that idiot that played in 09, what was he doing?
So it wasn't hard to take that you didn't get another
absolutely not. No, I actually enjoyed it. I went to Cardiff. I went to a couple of the games, can't remember where they played, but I just went and I actually enjoyed it. It's the only summer I've had really where I've had the chance just to go and watch. You know, from 2010, I've started to work, and obviously every single summer since then I've been broadcasting. So there was one time this summer I went to the World Test Championship final this summer just as a fan, and I absolutely adored it, just being at Lord's watching cricket and being in the Harris Garden in amongst. I'd never been in the Harris Garden. You know, my mates were, oh, it's great in the Harris Garden. And it's these kind of things that you kind of. I look back now at 16 years since I stopped playing cricket and think, oh, as much as I've done a lot, I think I've missed a lot as well. You know, in cricket, just being a normal fan.
We just whistled through your Ashes career, and it was 10 Test matches, maximum of 50 days. Not all of them went 5 days.
Oh, it went 50 days. We got hammered in Perth in 3.
So, but you know, as a portion of time in your life, quite small, but as an influence on your life. Huge.
Well, that's the opportunity for. You know, I look at this. I'll keep saying about this England side. They've got a huge opportunity of getting people talking about this team, this group forever. You know, I guess that's what's happened in 2005. You can pretty much just run the 05 team off your tongue because only 12 players played. Paul Collingwood obviously replacing Simon Jones for that last game, and there'll be more rotation this time. But if this England side can do something really special, the side will just roll off everyone's tongues for. It won't be 20 years. It'll be a lot longer than that. So I guess that's what Ashes cricket. I mean, the World Cups are always great, always special. But in the UK, it's the Ashes that count more than anything. It's the Ashes that get you that kind of. I don't think it's respect. It's just that love. You get a huge amount of love from the British supporters if you do something in an Ashes series.
We started off by talking about how you felt about Ashes cricket when you were a boy, you know, playing games, the players that you looked up to, trying to find out the score when you were going to school. Then you went through that as a cricketer, having success in Australia, getting your hands on the urn. Did it turn out to be the way you thought it would be? Was it everything you wanted it to be?
At the end, it was. Honestly, at the start, I hated it. Brisbane 202. Oh, God, if this is Ashes cricket, I just don't want to be involved in this. I found it was so stressful, pressurised. Don't think I slept that first week in Brisbane. And then the more I played, the more I realised, right, this is pretty cool. This is all right. You know, I got used to it, got a little bit more emotionally detached. I think at the start you're a bit too emotionally detached, kind of engaged with the Ashes, what it means, all the history, and you want to be a part of it. Probably tried too much, tried too hard. Eventually you realise it is a game of cricket. But try and get to that kind of notion early is very, very difficult. It probably takes 2 or 3 games to realise it's just a game of cricket, but it's, as we all know, it's not. It's more than a game of cricket.
And that's how you feel about it now?
Yeah. And again, you've got to think 20 years, you know, T20 crickets arrive, IPLs, 100 ball competitions, T10s, white ball cricket's become, you know, the kind of main part of a player's living. You know, if you want to earn a crust, you play white ball cricket, but you can't beat the red ball. You can't beat Test cricket, and you can't beat the Ashes. It's nothing quite like turning up in Australia or in the UK playing an Ashes game, and long may that continue.